finished Red Dragon. I'm kind of somewhere of the way through Silence of the Lambs. And I have one question. What is going on with this series? Let's talk about it. So, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. If this is your first time here, like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single video. Today we're talking about the Hannibal Lecter series, most specifically Red Dragon. This is not a review. Let me be clear, this is not a review. I will not be telling you how I feel about Red Dragon. It's okay. There's some things that I like, some things I really don't like. I mostly am making this video because I just don't understand the choices made following this book. So this is Red Dragon. It's followed by Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal. And this series is commonly referred to as the Hannibal Lecter series, it's written by Thomas Harris. There's a fourth book, Hannibal Rising, which is a prequel. I guess my questions are, A, how is this book 1 of your Hannibal Lecter series? He's barely in it. Not that important of a character. He is an important character, but he's not he's not the focal point of this book, of this story. It's hard to say that this is really his introduction. We kind of learn how he's caught, but that has more to do with Will Graham. And then we move on to Silence of the Lambs, and he is talking to a new FBI agent, Clarice Starling. And basically the premises of both of these books are very much the same, in which a serial killer is out, and they are, the FBI agent goes, talks to Hannibal Lecter, supreme genius, Hannibal the Cannibal. They're trying to get him to tell them some things about the killer that will help catch them. Interesting idea, interesting premise, fine. My question is, what happened to Will Graham? Why are there not more Will Graham books? I'm not saying, this is nothing to say negatively about Clarice. I do think she's a great character, and I like what I've read of Silence of the Lambs so far. I think the character of Will Graham in this book is probably its saving grace. It is the most interesting part of this book, and I don't understand why Thomas Harris chose to just leave him in the dust and focus on a new character. I tried Googling this. I tried reading some interviews and trying to figure out what this was all about. The only thing I could find was some Reddit theories about basically when this book came out, Hannibal Lecter is the one that readers gripped onto and were interested in and wanted to hear more about. And so they kind of just ditched the Will Graham character to focus on Hannibal some more. Which I guess if you wanted to do that, why not just I don't know, why not tell the story of Hannibal being caught that we get briefly in this book, but why not do another Will Graham book in which he's catching Hannibal, and Hannibal can be a more central focus of the book? I don't know. I think so what makes Will Graham interesting? Why do I want more books about Will Graham? We have the Alex Cross books by James Patterson. You've got the Bosch books by Michael Connelly. You've got there's tons of the Walter Mosley books about his detective. You've got the Ace Atkins books. All the point that I'm trying to make is that books a detective series, they do well. People like them. And so I don't understand why you're dropping Will Graham, right? And what makes Will Graham interesting? That's a good question. So Will Graham is described as being very empathetic, and that's what makes him so good at his job. He is able to empathize with anybody and everybody, including the killers, which allows him to put himself in the shoes of the killers and come up with motives and why they're doing what they're doing. And that's what makes him such a great FBI agent. But it is also a curse. It is also a terrible thing that he can do. He can empathize with these killers, and it puts him in this terrible headspace of, I understand why these killers kill people. And it's an interesting dynamic, right? a lot of this book is Will wrestling with this idea of, like, he feels an obligation to help these people, to help these people, like, to catch the killers, to make sure people are safe, to do whatever he can to stop bad people from doing bad things. But he is incredibly, he's incredibly just kind of like conflicted by this, because it also is very bad for him personally to do so. And so that, I think, is way more interesting than Hannibal Lecter. I truly, and again, this is entirely Anthony Hopkins' fault. Without Silence of the Lambs, because we had Manhunter, which was good. It's a great movie. I love it, but it didn't blow up in the zeitgeist the same way Silence of the Lambs did, and it's all because of Anthony Hopkins, like, making this character super famous. In this book, in the Silence of the Lambs book, I don't care that much about him. Like, it's an interesting character. Like, okay, he's a super genius, 8 people. He's more interesting in how he relates to Will Graham and how he relates to Clarice than he is as a character. He is a very good, like, villain, basically. Like, he is used to reveal things about our main character. And I like that about him, but does he stand on his own? No. Like, he doesn't. He's not given enough time to, first of all. So, A, it's kind of Thomas Harris's fault. And B, I think most people are kind of turned off. Well, maybe they're not. No. With the explosion of true crime, you can't even say people are turned off by, like, empathizing with a killer. That's not true. I think people are often, like, scared with how much they can empathize with killers. But, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think making a book for widespread audiences where you are put into the shoes of a killer and making him the lead character, it's a bit of a tough sell, I think, for some people. Especially like for books like this that are, like, you know, come out and they have to appeal to mass audiences. A book like this is designed to be, like, consumed by mass audiences. So you kind of have to have the hero be Will Graham, and I think you have an interesting hero in Will Graham, and I don't get the decision to drop, like, Will Graham from your book series and focus on the killer who is in jail for 2 of your 4 books, one of them being a prequel. I don't know. What I'm trying to say, right, this long rambling nonsense has been about how I want more Will Graham books. I like the trope of the retired person who has to come back to help. I'm a sucker for that. I love that. That is, like, I love the first chapter of this book, where you kind of are aware of what's going on. You're not really aware of what's going on. You know, one guy has a talent. They need it. He needs to come back. Like, there's a guy who's doing terrible things. We need you, Will Graham. We need you. I like that. And I would love to see more books of him grappling with, like, especially with what happens to him at the end of this book, which is only going to make him more traumatized, more, like, PTSD suffered individual, where he's, like, stabbed in the face and he's disfigured at the end of this book. Spoilers. Sorry, that's not really a spoiler. I'm not telling you what happens, but again, like, now that this has happened to him, we know he's already a troubled individual. How does he move forward? What happens to him? And we learn a little bit in Silence of the Lambs of, like, what happens to Will Graham. He just becomes a drunk. And that is the worst possible ending for this character. Again, it makes me kind of want to watch the TV show. I know the TV show is about Will Graham. I know they really dive into Will Graham. I know they change a lot about Will Graham. But this idea of, like, being so empathetic that you can empathize with the worst kinds of people and what that does to a person is fascinating. More fascinating than man in cage eats people. Like, I don't know. I think this is a missed opportunity. And I think more Will Graham books trying to catch killers, having to do, like, what haunts him the most, is a compelling idea that I would like to see more of. Not that I'm saying I don't like Clarice, because I do, and I like Silence of the Lambs so far, but, like, I just think the Will Graham character is inherently interesting, and you've done a great job at giving us the hero to root for, and then, like, Thomas Harris just abandons him. And I would like a concrete answer as to why, but I'm probably never going to get one. But check out Red Dragon if that it all sounded interesting to you. It's a decent read, and like I said, there's a lot of good things that I like about it. That's where I will leave it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and until next time, keep reading good books.